Usually when we think about leaders, especially today, it usually evokes a certain cynical or sarcastic attitude. Leaders. Who do you consider to be a true leader? I mean, our leaders today are either corrupt or lust after power, money. I mean, there aren't many people that we would consider a leader that's a role model, which would really be the definition of leaders. We have leaders in Hollywood, we have leaders in the sports world, in business, in politics. So really you can say we're living in a time of crisis of leadership. Who would you call a leader? And I'd love to hear from you. If you have someone that you would nominate, I'd love to hear who that is. Which of course leaves us with a tremendous vacuum, and especially for our children who are young and impressionable, and growing up get the impression that they don't have who to turn to, and the people that sometimes we expect to really be role models end up disappointing us or worse. And it becomes very much, leadership is about power, control, and so on. So I think it's a vital topic to speak about. And the interesting thing is, which is above all, is that we'll discover that the truth is each one of us has a leader within us. That even though, yes, it's good to have a leader outside, that's someone that we can look up to, but we all have that leader within us. And when we can identify that, in general, the standards of our lives and in general, everything we look at will be seen quite differently. So where do you turn to? The best-selling book in history is the Bible. It's such a big bestseller, it doesn't hit any best-selling lists because it just would simply always be number one. There are more Bibles that are sold a year than any other book, cumulatively all books. Bible is a time-tested, goes back thousands of years, and discusses topics that are both timeless and timely. And it also gives us a description of what a leader is. The first true leader, described as everybody would identify, would be Moses. So how does the Bible describe Moses? That'd be interesting. What's the definition of a leader? Now, most of us would think of a leader as someone who's ambitious, who's very talented, who's extremely well-connected, charismatic, is able to climb the ladder, so to speak. Today, leaders are the ones perhaps that raise the most money, able to generate rainmakers. But the Bible, describing Moses, actually calls him a shepherd. That's how Moses is described. And Moses was a shepherd. And that's why you have the expression, the loyal shepherd, a shepherd of a flock. Now, why was Moses a shepherd? Well, technically speaking, he was working for his future father-in-law, and he tended to flocks of sheep. But why would that be the description of Moses? So we're told, the story is told, that Moses was one day, he was tending to his flock, and he suddenly realized that one of the sheep disappeared. Now that alone, between thousands of sheep, to identify and recognize that one sheep had disappeared is already quite a feat of sensitivity. And he went looking, and he found the sheep had wandered off from the flock quite a distance, seeing the sheep is sipping water from a brook of water. He realized that the sheep was thirsty. So besides feeling sad for the sheep, he let the sheep finish drinking. He picked it up and put it on his shoulders and carried it back to the flock. So this which is a midrashic narrative, tells us that when God saw that, he said, if that's a man that can be so sensitive to one sheep, and nobody's looking, and it's just a sheep among thousands, he's the person I will entrust my people to. He will be their leader. So the first quality and virtue and feature of a leader is sensitivity. Most of us would not necessarily begin with that. Sensitivity, not ambition, not drive, not talents, not strengths. Those are all good things. But the first thing is sensitivity. If you don't have the empathy, which means essentially it's not about you, not about the ego. It's not about your arrogant contribution to this world, but it's your sensitivity and the feeling for another. As I said, Moses did not have to go pursue that sheep. Who would even know? And yet, that's what mattered to him. So that sensitivity, in Hebrew, there's a word for it. I'll introduce the word. I'll transliterate it, called bittul, B-I-T-T-U-L. It's a very hard word to translate into English. It's a combination of modesty, humility, but maybe above all, suspending yourself committed to something greater than you are. That's the true sign of a leader. And a person like that is worthy of being a leader, because when you have someone like that, then it's someone you want to follow, you want to listen to, because they know how to listen to you. It's not someone who's trying to dominate or control or sees themselves as God's gift and stands on a pedestal in an ivory tower. It's someone that is driven by the most important feature of all, humility. And that's why indeed later you find in the Bible as well, how is Moses described? The humblest man that walked on this earth. Again, would that be, humility is a beautiful virtue, but is that the way we describe a leader? Because humility is a quality that you can trust. And that's what you need most, trust. Leaders today may be very talented, may be very powerful, but do we trust them? Would you trust them? Came to their own self-interest and your interest? That's why Moses remains the ultimate leader, and the leader that till this day we look at as being the ultimate role model. But what does it tell us about life in general? We don't value humility, even though everyone will say humility is a beautiful virtue. Everybody, a person is humble. Most people actually see humility as weakness. A person is ready to defer to someone else. They're flexible. A driven person, a determined person, an ambitious person, ready to step over everyone. That's considered for many people to be a strength. Humility is seen as weakness, even though it may be admired. But the truth is, humility does not mean someone that has low self-esteem or someone that has no respect for themselves. Humility is someone that has full self-esteem, self-confidence, is very much aware of their strengths. Moses was aware who he was. He was aware he was chosen by God. He was aware of his power, his influence, his scholarship, his brilliance. However, he always said to himself, it's not my own. I'm not a self-made person. This was a gift given to me. And if someone else was given this gift, they may have been greater than I am. That is the true sign of a leader. So look at ourselves. We live in a world where dog eats dog, in the sense it's a survival of the fittest. And we're told if you want to succeed, you have to fight for it. No one else is going to fight for you. So it creates this type of attitude that only the aggressive win. And those that are not going to fight for what they stand for will be stepped over. Now it's true in many cases, because indeed in this world, that's what we value. Money, power, control, things that are extremely external, but at the moment seems to be very powerful. But when you think about it quietly, you say to yourself, is that really where power lies? How long does it last, that type of control? The people who have the true deepest impact in history were the ones that had that humility, that realized there was something greater than themselves. Look at all the great empires that rose and fell. The Roman Empire, Spanish Empire, the Assyrian Empire, the Babylonians, the Greeks, the Egyptian. The list goes on. What happened to them all? Within a few hundred years, they were gone. It was ultimately their own success and thinking that they were the source of their own success that brought them down. They rose by the sword and they died by the sword. They rose with their arrogance and they died by their arrogance. It is the humility that really goes, so to speak, under the radar that allows something to perpetuate. Just look at parents and children. I remember once giving a talk to a bunch of academics, a group of academics, and I for some reason I didn't feel I was getting through to them. So I decided to share with them a question, ask a question, and then ask them to propose an answer. And I said to them, so who do you think, what would you consider to be the greatest Western philosopher? So pretty much hands down, most people will say Aristotle. Some have other names, but the point is, choose someone, Aristotle. The greatest writer, English literature, Shakespeare. The greatest artist, Rembrandt, Van Gogh. The greatest musician, Bach, Beethoven, Mozart. Again, the point is not who it is. The point is that identify one of them. And now, let me ask you the next question, I said to them. Did they left legacies, they left books, they left art, they left music, ideas that shaped history and shaped life and shaped the world. But do they have children? Did any of them have children? And I remember them all looking at each other. Of course, they could always go to their phones and check on Wikipedia or Google, but they didn't want to do that. That wouldn't be the sign of an academic. And many just said, not sure. What about grandchildren? Well, that for sure no one knew. Did Aristotle have any children or grandchildren? So I said, if they were so dedicated to the ideas that were so truthful to them, and I'm not taking away any of their contributions, why did they not pass it on to their children and grandchildren that we have today, the great-great-grandchildren of Aristotle and Shakespeare and Julius Caesar and Van Gogh or Beethoven, that are continuing the legacy of their great ancestors? Now, by contrast, let's look at another biblical figure, Abraham, for instance. So Abraham was the pioneer. We spoke about it a few weeks ago. Pioneer of monotheism. He introduced the concept of virtue, of charity, of kindness, of love. And the greatest quality of all of his was, you know what? That he passed it on to his family. That's what God was most impressed with. You know, they say Rousseau, one of the great thinkers of the Enlightenment, he didn't have time for his children. He brought his 7 children to the city square and said someone else has to take care of them because he's bringing his gifts to the world. What's lacking in all these individuals is it was about them. And their contributions may have been great, but it was about them. And they did not have that wherewithal and that humility, the importance. Who has time to diaper children? Who has time for a nagging spouse when I'm busy philosophizing and pontificating and contributing great things in this world? What Moses represented was that he left not just himself and his ideas, students, children, family, that today we can sit and talk about it literally like they call Moshe Rabbeinu, our teacher. He's still our teacher. This is a sign of someone that transcends even brilliance. It's not just scholarship, it's not just great ideas. It's that it's not about them. It's a deeper truth. You know, we call it being in the zone, channeling a higher truth. That's the ultimate power of a leader. In one of the expressions in the Bible, it says, God says to Moses, I have given you greatness not for yourself, but for them, for the people. So how does this translate? It translates at looking at the world and reframing how we see the universe today. We don't value this because we don't value eternal truths. We value instant gratification. We value things that are powerful for the moment. So then, of course, who's going to be the leader? Whoever's the most powerful at this moment. As soon as you start valuing eternity, immortality, things that last forever, you'll look for a different type of leader. Then you need a leader that does not get in the way and does not allow their own arrogance, their own ego to dominate. It's not about them. It's about that greater truth. So it really comes down to what our standards are. Now we know we have this vicious cycle. The media likes to blame the people. They say we give them the lowest common denominator of entertainment because that's what the people want. And the people say, well, we have nothing else to watch because that's what the media is feeding us. And the same thing with leadership. The leaders are saying, this is what the people want, I'll give it to them. And the people say, what should we do? Look at our leaders. So everybody can point fingers and blame each other in this vicious cycle. The truth is you have to take control of yourself. You can't always change the world around you. What are your standards? What are you looking for? In your own family, in your own home, in your community, what are the most important things for you? Is eternity important? Is there something that lasts, that is important to you, or you'd rather have something right now that is very powerful? A lot of money, a lot of luxury, a lot of possessions, many homes. Is that enough? I mean, I've met people, billionaires, who don't speak to their children and their children don't speak to them. They cry about it. And I say, so would you give away your money to be able to have a relationship with your child? Not everybody says yes. You'd think they would say yes, right? Not necessarily, because it all comes down to what we value. So if we're ready to give up, the Talmud bemoans the fact that people will give up what it calls eternal life for temporary life. And statistics show that if you offer somebody right now $100,000 or $1 million over 10 years, most people want the $100,000 right now. Because we don't know what will be in 10 years. Even though we like to talk about thinking ahead and planning ahead, eternity is the most powerful thing of all. Everybody wants the fountain of youth. But the secret to it is a price you have to pay. That is to give up your self-worship, your self-interest. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't have interests, but it can be the beginning and end of everything. No relationship can last if it's all about your needs. Because needs change, they're temporal, and people's different needs as they change, so therefore how those needs are satisfied are changed. But when you learn about that giving is more important than taking, and that it's not just about begins and ends with your needs, it's about what mark is being made in the universe, what eternal legacy, what eternal footprint is being left in the universe, then you think very differently about what a leader truly is. Which leads me to the point that about each of us being a leader ourselves. A leader really means that you feel confident, that you have what it takes to contribute something that nobody else can contribute. Do you feel that way? That's what a true leader is. It's not just how much power you have and how much you exert influence on others. It's, do you feel that ability, that capacity? And that, I would submit, is the single most important thing that each of us needs and we should be conveying to our children, which is that you have something to contribute, that you and only you can contribute. I'm not getting into whether you contributed to 1 million people, to 8 billion people, or to 5 people, or to 1 person. But you have something that is generated from within. Insecurity lies at the heart of so many of our psychological issues. And we try to cover up that insecurity with all different ways of numbing it, whether it's different addictions and different dependencies or different projections. Here I have money, here I have power, here I have influence, here I'm a person that people are afraid of. All that is covering up essentially a deep insecurity. Secure people don't need to influence others in that way. They are just who they are. They're comfortable in their own skin. And a true leader is someone that generates, is not busy hoarding and not busy taking and not feeling deprived because someone else may have taken something from you. Do you have that sense? Now, if you don't, it's not because you don't have the leader within you, it's just you're not aware of it. So I'm here to tell you that you have within yourself strengths that you may not be aware of. And when you access them, you have something to contribute that nobody else can contribute. That's what makes you a leader. Whether you'll end up being a leader of a country or a leader of a company, that's a separate discussion. That may require different skills. But the fact that you have something to give and others can learn from that, and you understand it's not yours, it's a gift given to you, and you're channeling it, that's the secret to true leadership. That's what Moses represented. That's why he was such a great man. Do you know that Moses had a speech defect? He couldn't speak clearly. As a matter of fact, the Bible tells us that when Moses was chosen by God to be the Savior, to come to redeem the Jews from Egypt, he said, I'm a man of no words. I have a speech defect. He said it in different ways of expressing himself. I cannot speak. Choose my brother Aaron. Choose someone that's a good speaker. And interestingly, Moses is the man that God wants. And it says that Elo Hadvarim, these are the words that Moses spoke. There's no person on earth whose words have been repeated more than the man of no words called Moses. How's that possible? Because God responds to Moses. You know what he says to him? Who gave man a mouth to speak? Do you think I'm looking for an orator? You think I'm looking for a wordsmith? Someone who knows how to express themselves? I need someone who's going to convey a higher truth than themselves. I give a man a mouth to speak. You be my channel. I will speak through you. It's not about you. It's not about your wisdom. It's about a higher truth. And that's the man of all people on earth God chose, a person who could not speak on his own. That's who you're looking for. So it's not about any type of physical or external or superficial expression. It's about truths, and a truth that resonates is far deeper than the greatest orator on earth. Something that resonates. And that's what Moses left us. And that's why it continues to live on. Because eternity doesn't come from short-term conquests. It comes from the dedication to something greater than yourself. Each of us has that capacity. And it's interesting and paradoxical, but this is the truth. When you commit yourself to something greater than you are, you become an extension of that. So, ironically, what happens is a person who's committed to themselves, as great as you are, there's always going to be a limit. At some point it comes to an end. If you're committed to something eternal, you become an extension of eternity. So even our self-interest, it serves to really have this level of bittul, this level of humility, because it actually perpetuates you. You become, instead of a mortal, an immortal. Something that, instead of temporary and impermanent, something that's permanent and eternal. So we all have that capacity, and it's time to start looking inside ourselves. We can't always blame others. And start saying, what am I doing to express that unique soul that I have? To sing my unique song, express my unique voice. And what am I doing for those around me, my children, my family, friends. We all have those powerful leadership qualities. That's just about understanding what makes you unique and how you can illuminate and give to others. So I hope this resonates to some extent. And we look to Moses as that ultimate leader, but also a role model for each one of us in our own small way or large way. We can't even measure these things. And that we indeed leave a mark in this world, a mark that changes the world, that makes it different than was here before we arrived, because we have that ability, the ability to create something that will forever change existence. Thank you so much for listening. This has been Simon Jacobson, Meaningful Life Center, meaningfullife.com. Love to hear your feedback, your thoughts, your comments, and of course, please share. Please share with others. And may we create that ripple effect, that butterfly effect that does transform the universe. And as we discover the leader within, it'll be easier to expect from others to be leaders in their own right. And hopefully create a world where humility is more powerful than arrogance. A world where the power of love is more powerful than the love of power. Be well and be blessed. Thank you so much.